My fingertips were raw from the scalding water, skin pruned and angry red as I scrubbed the last of the dinner plates. The restaurant's ancient dishwasher had broken down again, and Mr. Vasquez wasn't about to call a repairman when he had me to do the job for minimum wage. Elena. Table 7 needs clearing, and Table 3 is still waiting for their check. Marnie shouted over the clatter of the kitchen, her voice strained from a double shift. Coming, I called back, drying my hands on the stained apron tied around my waist. I glanced at the cracked watch on my wrist, 11:32 p.m. My feet ached in the second-hand sneakers I'd bought at the thrift store last month, the soles already wearing thin. One more hour until closing, and then the 30-minute walk back to my apartment. The night was going to be short, as usual, before my early morning shift at the coffee shop across town. The dining room of Bella Nota was dimly lit, attempting to disguise the peeling wallpaper and scuffed floors with shadows and the glow of cheap electric candles. Despite its wear, it was the most upscale restaurant in our neighborhood, the only place that served cloth napkins alongside plastic-covered menus. And tonight, something was different. I felt it before I saw it, an electricity in the air, a sudden straightening of servers' spines, hushed whispers as I pushed through the swinging door. A black SUV with tinted windows had just pulled up outside. Not just any SUV, a gleaming Escalade that looked as out of place on our pothole-ridden street as a diamond in a coal mine. Two broad-shouldered men in dark suits emerged first, scanning the sidewalk with practiced precision before one opened the rear door. "Clear the corner table," Marnie hissed at me, her eyes wide. "Now, Elena." "But there are people. Move them. Corner table by the window. Now." I hurried over to the elderly couple enjoying their tiramisu, apologizing profusely as I offered them complimentary drinks at a table by the bar. They looked confused, but didn't argue when Mr. Vasquez himself appeared, ushering them away with a nervous smile. The door chimed, and the restaurant fell silent. The man who entered wasn't what I expected. In my mind, power always came with bulk and brutality, like my stepfather's meaty fists or my last boyfriend's broad, threatening stance. This man was lean, elegant even, in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, cut precisely, not a strand out of place, but it was his eyes that made my stomach clench. Obsidian dark, missing nothing as they swept across the room. Behind him trailed a boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with the same midnight hair but softer features. The child's eyes were downcast, small shoulders hunched beneath an expensive navy sweater. One of the suited men, clearly security, stayed close to the boy, while the other positioned himself near the entrance. "Corner table," Mr. Vasquez murmured to me, materializing at my side. "Their usual orders will come out shortly. Just bring water for now. Bottled, not tap." "Their usual?" I whispered. "Mr. Castellano and his son come once a month. Always the same order. Always the same table. Don't make eye contact with Mr. Castellano unless he speaks to you directly. Be attentive to the boy, but not overly familiar." My heart hammered against my ribs. Even I knew that name, Adriano Castellano. The papers never directly connected him to the organized crime that plagued our city. But everyone knew. The disappearances, the businesses that burned down after refusing protection, the judges who suddenly ruled in favor of certain development projects. His legitimate business empire was just the surface. Construction companies, import-export firms, high-end nightclubs downtown, and now I was supposed to serve him water. Bottled, not tap. I gathered 3 crystal glasses and a bottle of San Pellegrino on a tray, my hands trembling slightly as I approached the table. The security detail watched my every move. "Good evening," I said softly, placing a glass before each person. The boy didn't look up as I set his water down. "Mr. Castellano gave me a brief nod, his attention focused on his phone. The boy fidgeted in his seat, small fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. As I carefully poured the sparkling water, I noticed something I hadn't seen from across the room. A small, flesh-colored hearing aid tucked behind the child's ear. The boy glanced up suddenly, catching me looking. His eyes were a startling blue. Not his father's obsidian darkness, but like fragments of sky. There was a wariness there that no child should possess, an old soul trapped in a young body. I smiled reflexively. To my surprise, his expression softened momentarily before returning to its careful neutrality. "Anything else for now, sir?" I asked Mr. Castellano. "No. The kitchen knows what we want." His voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle, but carried an undercurrent of absolute authority. He didn't look up from his phone. As I turned to leave, my hip caught the edge of the table. The water bottle toppled, splashing across the pristine tablecloth and onto the boy's lap. He jumped up, startled, but silent. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, grabbing napkins and dabbing frantically at the spreading stain. In an instant, one security guard had his hand inside his jacket, while Mr. Castellano's eyes snapped to mine. Cold, calculating, assessing the threat. "It's just water," I stammered. "I'm so sorry, I'll get more napkins." The boy tugged at his father's sleeve, his hands moving in quick, fluid motions, sign language. Mr. Castellano's expression remained impassive as he responded with his own signs, his movements precise and controlled. "Get the boy a clean napkin," he instructed me, his tone even. "And be more careful." I nodded, backing away and rushing to the kitchen. My hands shook as I grabbed fresh napkins and another bottle of water. "What happened?" Marnie demanded. "I spilled water on the kid," I whispered, my voice cracking. "The Mafia boss's kid." Her face paled. "Elena, it's fine. It was just water." But my heart was still racing, and I couldn't shake the image of that guard reaching for what I was certain was a weapon. When I returned to the table, the boy was dry, the wet tablecloth replaced by the second security guard. Mr. Castellano was showing something to his son on his phone, their heads bent together, the child's hands occasionally forming signs that his father answered with his own. I placed the fresh napkins and water bottle on the table with extra care, keeping a safe distance. "Your food will be out shortly." As I started to move away, I heard the soft tap of fingers against the table. The boy was looking directly at me, his blue eyes intent. He raised his hands, forming shapes I couldn't understand. "Mr. Castellano glanced up, his expression unreadable. "My son is asking if you're new here. He doesn't recognize you." "Yes, sir. I started 3 weeks ago." The boy's hands moved again, and a ghost of a smile touched his father's lips. "Lucas says your smile is nice, not scared nice like the others." I blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Lucas. That's very kind." Lucas's eyes lit up when I addressed him directly. He signed something else, quicker this time. "He wants to know your name, Mr. Castellano translated. "Elena," I said, then on impulse, formed the letter E with my fingers, one of the few signs I knew. The boy's face transformed with a brilliant smile. He rapidly signed something to his father, who raised an eyebrow. "He says you know sign language?" "No, just the alphabet, and not very well," I admitted. "My neighbor's daughter is deaf. She taught me a few basics." Lucas tugged at his father's sleeve again, his small face animated as his hands flew through more signs. "Mr. Castellano studied me for a moment. "Lucas would like you to be our server whenever we come in. It wasn't a request. It was a decision that had already been made." "Of course," I replied. Not that I had any choice in the matter. The rest of their meal passed without incident. I brought their food, pasta with a simple butter sauce for Lucas, and osso buco for his father. The security men didn't eat, their vigilant gazes sweeping the restaurant continuously. Lucas occasionally signed to me directly. Simple things his father explained. He was asking if I made the pasta. I didn't. If I liked working here. I lied and nodded. Where I learned the alphabet, I spelled out friend with clumsy fingers. When they left, Mr. Castellano handed me a folded bill without looking at me. "For the boy," he said quietly. I waited until they were gone before unfolding it. $100 bill. More than I'd make in tips for the entire week. "You got lucky," Marnie said as we closed up. "Spilling water on the Castellano kid could have gone very differently." "The boy seems sweet," I murmured. Marnie snorted. "Sweet or not, he's still Adriano Castellano's son. Don't forget that." But as I walked home that night, my pocket heavy with the $100 bill, I couldn't stop thinking about Lucas's bright blue eyes, and the way his entire face had lit up when I'd signed the letter E. I had no idea that simple connection would change my life forever. A month passed before I saw them again. Same table, same security detail, same precise timing. The last Thursday of the month at 10 p.m. This time, I was ready. Lucas spotted me immediately, his hands moving excitedly. Mr. Castellano didn't translate, but the boys' happiness was evident. "Good evening," I greeted them, placing their waters down without spilling a drop. Lucas immediately signed something to me. "He's asking if you learned more signs," Mr. Castellano said, his dark eyes studying me with newfound interest. I had. Every night for the past month, after my double shifts, I'd been practicing basic sign language from YouTube videos on my cracked phone screen, falling asleep with my fingers still forming shapes in the darkness. Carefully, I signed, "Hello, Lucas. How are you?" The boy's face lit up like I'd handed him the moon. He signed rapidly back, too fast for me to catch. "He says he's happy to see you again," Mr. Castellano translated, something shifting behind his eyes, "and he wants to know if you practice just for him." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Yes," I admitted, "I did." For the first time, Mr. Castellano looked directly at me, really looked at me, as though seeing past the worn uniform and tired eyes. I resisted the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. "Why?" he asked simply. I glanced at Lucas, who was watching our exchange with bright, curious eyes. "Because it made him happy last time. That seemed important." Something flickered across Mr. Castellano's face. Surprise, maybe, or skepticism. People like me didn't do things for people like them without expecting something in return, but I had no agenda beyond the simple joy on Lucas's face. "The usual orders?" I asked, breaking the moment. He nodded, returning his attention to his phone. But throughout the meal, I caught him watching me interact with Lucas, his dark eyes unreadable. When they left, Mr. Castellano handed me $200 bills. I tried to refuse the second one. "Sir, this is for the sign language lessons," he interrupted quietly. "My son has few people who make the effort." That night changed the pattern. Instead of monthly visits, the black Escalade appeared outside Bellinot every Thursday, like clockwork. Each time, I knew a few more signs. Each time, Lucas's face would light up with genuine happiness to see me. Each time, Mr. Castellano watched our interactions with that same inscrutable expression. By the third month, Lucas was teaching me new signs, correcting my form with gentle touches, his laughter, slightly too loud, slightly off-key, filling the quiet corner of the restaurant whenever I made a mistake. By the fourth month, Mr. Castellano had stopped translating, allowing us our own conversations while he conducted business calls in hushed tones. And then came the night that changed everything. It was pouring rain, the kind of spring deluge that turned the streets into rivers and kept most customers away. Lucas and Mr. Castellano arrived as usual, though Lucas was sniffling, his eyes reddened from what looked like a cold. "Maybe soup instead of pasta tonight?" I suggested to Mr. Castellano. He nodded, studying his son with concern. "He's been sick all week, insisted on coming tonight anyway." I brought Lucas hot chicken soup and a special honey lemon tea I'd asked the kitchen to prepare. The boy's hands moved slowly as he thanked me, his usual energy dampened by fever. "You should be home in bed," I signed, exaggerating my concerned expression. Lucas shook his head stubbornly. He signed back, "Wanted to see you." My heart squeezed in my chest. As the evening progressed, Lucas grew more lethargic, eventually resting his head against his father's arm. "Mr. Castellano murmured something to one of the security men, who nodded and stepped outside, presumably to bring the car around early. "We'll be leaving now," Mr. Castellano told me, gathering Lucas against his side. The boy looked up at me with fever-bright eyes. His hands moved weakly, forming signs I recognized immediately. "Thank you, Mom." The restaurant seemed to freeze around us. Mr. Castellano went utterly still, his dark eyes snapping to mine. The second security guard shifted his position slightly. Lucas, oblivious to the tension, leaned against his father, eyes drooping with exhaustion. I stood paralyzed, ice flooding my veins. The word, that simple sign for mother, hung in the air between us. Mr. Castellano said something rapid and quiet to his son in Italian, then lifted him into his arms. "I'm sorry," I stammered. We're leaving." He cut me off, his voice deadly calm. As they walked out, Lucas's sleepy gaze found mine over his father's shoulder. He lifted one small hand in farewell, and then they were gone. I didn't sleep that night, certain I'd lost my job. Or worse, what did it mean when the son of Adriano Castellano called you Mom? Nothing good, I was sure. The boy's mother was never mentioned, never seen. The gossip around the restaurant suggested she was dead, though the how of it changed with each telling. What I didn't expect was the black sedan waiting outside my apartment building when I returned from my morning shift at the coffee shop the next day. The driver's door opened, and a man in a dark suit emerged. Not one of the security guards I recognized from the restaurant, but cut from the same cloth. Broad shoulders, impassive expression, alertness that bordered on predatory. "Miss Elena Reyes," he called. My feet froze to the sidewalk. I considered running, but where would I go? If Adriano Castellano wanted to find me, a man like that had resources I couldn't begin to imagine. "Yes?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Mr. Castellano requests your presence." Not an invitation, not a suggestion, a command dressed in polite phrasing. "Now?" I clutched my bag tighter against my side, feeling the weight of my pepper spray, a useless defense against whatever might be coming. "Yes, miss." He opened the rear passenger door and waited. I took a shaky breath. "Do I have a choice?" His expression didn't change. "Mr. Castellano was very specific about bringing you. It concerns Lucas." Lucas. The sick little boy with sky-blue eyes who had called me Mom. Whatever trouble I was in, I couldn't refuse if it involved him. The car's interior was cool and smelled of expensive leather. The windows were tinted dark enough that I couldn't see out, leaving me disoriented as we drove. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 20 minutes, we slowed and turned onto what felt like a private drive, the smooth asphalt giving way to the crunch of gravel. When the car stopped and the door opened, I blinked in the sudden sunlight. We were parked before a sprawling mansion set back on manicured grounds, surrounded by a high stone wall. 2 armed guards stood at attention near the ornate front entrance. "This way, Miss Reyes." I followed the driver up a curved stone pathway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. My worn sneakers and coffee-stained uniform felt even shabbier against the backdrop of such opulence. Inside, the foyer opened to soaring ceilings and a sweeping staircase. The house was surprisingly warm. Not the cold marble mausoleum I'd imagined, but filled with rich woods, plush rugs, and what looked like genuine art on the walls. It felt like a home, albeit an extraordinarily expensive one. A slender woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun, appeared from a side hallway. "Miss Reyes." She greeted me with a faint accent I couldn't place. "Mr. Castellano is in his study. Lucas is resting upstairs with fever. I'm Mrs. Abelli, the housekeeper." I nodded, my throat too dry for words. Mrs. Abelli led me through a maze of corridors to a heavy wooden door. She knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. Adriano Castellano sat behind a massive desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He looked up as we entered, those obsidian eyes locking onto mine. With a few curt words, he ended his call. "Miss Reyes," he said, gesturing to a chair opposite his desk. "Sit." Mrs. Abelli disappeared, closing the door behind her. Alone with him, the air felt charged with an energy I couldn't name. Fear, certainly, but something else too. His presence seemed to fill the room, making it difficult to breathe. "Lucas has been asking for you," he said without preamble. Of all the things I'd expected, this wasn't it. For me? Why? His fingers drummed once on the polished surface of his desk. "His fever has worsened. The doctor says it's nothing serious. A common virus. But he's been distressed. He signed your name several times this morning." I didn't know what to say. The most powerful criminal in the city was telling me his son wanted me when he was sick. It made no sense. "I don't understand," I finally admitted. "We've only met a few times at the restaurant." 6 times. he corrected immediately. 6 Thursdays. And he talks about you constantly, the waitress who learned signs just for him. Heat crept up my neck. It wasn't much. Just basic phrases. It was everything to him, Castellano said quietly. His gaze bore into mine, searching for something. Lucas's mother died when he was 4. Cancer. Since then, he's had nannies, tutors, security, but he's formed attachments to none of them. My heart ached for the little boy upstairs. I'm sorry about his mother. Francesca, he said, the name carrying a weight of loss I hadn't expected from someone like him. She was everything to us both. For a moment, vulnerability shadowed his features, transforming him from untouchable crime lord to grieving widower. Then it was gone, his expression hardening once more. I've had you investigated, Elena Reyes, he continued. My blood ran cold. Investigated? 24 years old, born in Queens to Mexican immigrants, father unknown. Mother died when you were 16, a stepfather with 3 domestic violence charges. You left home at 17, community college for 1 semester before dropping out due to financial constraints. No criminal record. 2 jobs, 60 hours a week. Sends money to a half-sister in Phoenix every month. He recited the details of my life with clinical detachment. I felt stripped bare, my entire existence reduced to bullet points in a file. Why? I whispered. Because my son called you mother last night, and I needed to understand why. His voice remained calm, but his eyes had turned hard again. I needed to know if you were using him to get to me. Anger flared in my chest, cutting through the fear. I've never wanted anything from either of you except to see Lucas smile when I signed to him correctly. So you claim. It's the truth, I insisted. I didn't even know who you were that first night until Mr. Vasquez told me. And I certainly never encouraged Lucas to call me that. I would never. He studied me for a long, tense moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. I believe you, he finally said, which leaves me with a problem. What problem? My son is attached to you, and he's upstairs, sick and asking for you. He leaned forward slightly. I want you to see him. It wasn't what I expected. Now? Yes, and then we'll discuss terms. Terms? My voice shook. I don't understand. Lucas needs stability, consistency. Since Francesca... He trailed off, jaw tightening. I want to offer you a position in my household. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. A position? As Lucas's companion. You would live here, continue his sign language development, assist with his schoolwork, accompany him to appointments. His current tutor is excellent with academics, but lacks the connection Lucas seems to have formed with you. My mind reeled. Leave my cramped apartment, my double shifts, my exhausting life for what? Living in a Mafia boss's mansion? Caring for his son? I can't just abandon my jobs, I said weakly. I'll double whatever you're making now. His tone made it clear this was a generous offer, far more than I was worth on paper. It's not that simple, I protested. I have responsibilities. My sister depends on me. Triple then. Plus housing, meals, healthcare, and I'll continue the payments to your sister in Phoenix. Increased, of course. I stared at him, speechless. The amount he was casually offering would change not just my life, but my sister's too. Maria could finish college instead of working 2 jobs herself. We could finally get ahead instead of barely treading water. Why me? I finally asked. You could hire anyone. Professional tutors, childcare specialists with degrees. I've had a dozen since Francesca died. None of them connected with Lucas the way you have. A flicker of something, vulnerability perhaps, crossed his face before vanishing. My son's happiness is not negotiable. Before I could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Mrs. Abelli poked her head in. Mr. Castellano, the young master is awake and asking again. He nodded, then turned back to me. Will you at least see him today? We can discuss the position after. This, at least, I could agree to, of course. We climbed the grand staircase to the 2nd floor, where a wide hallway led to what was clearly the family wing of the house. 2 security men nodded respectfully as we passed. Lucas's room was a child's paradise. Spacious, with walls painted a soft blue and decorated with stars that probably glowed in the dark. One corner held a professional-grade telescope pointed at the window. Another wall was lined with bookshelves stuffed with volumes in multiple languages, a gaming area with the latest consoles, a study area with a computer and art supplies. But the luxury faded to the background when I saw Lucas himself, small and pale against his pillows, an iPad abandoned at his side. His eyes lit up when he saw me, then immediately darted to his father, uncertainty replacing joy. "Look who's here to see you, campione," Mr. Castellano said, his voice gentling in a way I hadn't heard before. Lucas's hands moved rapidly in sign, too fast for me to catch. "Yes, she came because you asked for her," his father replied, signing simultaneously. The boy looked back at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and hope. Slowly, his fingers formed signs I recognized. "You came." I moved closer to his bedside and carefully signed back. "Of course. I heard you were sick." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. He patted the edge of his bed, inviting me to sit. For the next hour, I sat with Lucas, signing simple conversations, looking at a picture book he wanted to show me, letting him teach me new words. His father remained in the room, sometimes on his phone handling business in hushed tones, sometimes watching us with that same unreadable expression. Lucas's energy began to flag as his medication made him drowsy. As his eyes started to close, he suddenly gripped my hand. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately forming the sign that had caused such tension the night before. "Mom." I froze, eyes darting to Mr. Castellano, who had gone very still by the window. Lucas's gaze followed mine to his father, and something passed between them, a silent communication built from years of understanding each other. The boy's face crumpled slightly, and he signed something I couldn't follow. Mr. Castellano moved to his son's side, brushing dark hair from his forehead with unexpected tenderness. "We'll talk about it later, campione. Rest now." As Lucas's eyes drifted shut, Mr. Castellano gestured for me to follow him out. In the hallway, he closed the door softly behind us. "I should explain," he began, his voice low. "When Lucas called you Mom last night, it was the first time he's used that sign for anyone since Francesca died." My breath caught in my throat. The weight of his words settled on my shoulders, heavy, significant. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I would never intentionally—" "I understand that now," Mr. Castellano said, cutting me off with a raised hand. "Initially, I thought perhaps you had encouraged it, seeking some advantage. I wouldn't do that to a child," I said, anger flickering through my uncertainty. "Especially not one who's lost his mother." He studied me with those penetrating dark eyes. "No, I don't believe you would, which makes my proposal more urgent." He led me to a sunlit sitting room down the hall, with plush sofas and a wall of windows overlooking immaculate gardens. A crystal decanter and glasses sat on a side table. He poured himself a measure of amber liquid but didn't offer me one. "Lucas attends a private school for deaf children 3 days a week," he explained, rolling the glass between his palms. "The other 2 days, tutors come to the house. He's exceptionally bright, reading 2 grade levels above his age, advanced in mathematics. His signing vocabulary is extensive, though he refuses to use his voice at all, despite the cochlear implant." "He can hear?" I asked, surprised. "Partially. The implant gives him some sound, but he was born profoundly deaf. The doctors suggested early intervention might help him develop speech. But after Francesca," his jaw tightened. "He stopped trying, refused to work with the speech therapists." I nodded slowly. "And what exactly would my role be?" "You would accompany him to school as his personal aide, assist with homework, continue building his confidence, and yes, be a maternal figure without replacing Francesca." He met my eyes directly. "I won't lie to you, Elena. I'm asking a great deal. For a great deal of money," I countered softly. His mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Yes, I believe in fair compensation, and if it doesn't work out, if Lucas decides he doesn't want me around anymore, or if I'm not what he needs, then we part ways, with a generous severance package." He set his untouched drink down, "But I don't think that will happen. My son chose you, Elena, and I've learned to trust his instincts." There was something he wasn't saying, something beneath the surface of this conversation that I couldn't quite grasp. Why me, really? A waitress with no qualifications beyond basic sign language and a kind smile? There must be 100 women better suited for this position, I said, voicing my doubt. Perhaps. But none of them made my son sign the word mother for the first time in 3 years. He leaned forward slightly. Do you know what Lucas told me just now, when you saw him sign that word again? I shook my head. He said, she smiles like mom, not sad for me. Castellano's voice remained steady, but something flickered in his eyes. Most people who learn of Lucas's deafness look at him with pity. You never did. From that first night, you treated him like any other child. I remembered the first evening, Lucas's bright eyes when I'd spelled my name. Had it been that simple, just treating him normally? I need time to think about this, I finally said. It's a major life change, of course. He reached into his jacket and produced a business card, heavy cream stock with just a phone number embossed in black. Take 24 hours. Call this number with your decision. In the car on the way back to my apartment, I stared at the card, turning it over and over in my fingers. The driver remained silent, eyes on the road. When we reached my building, he handed me an envelope. From Mr. Castellano. Inside was a stack of $100 bills, $5,000, according to the neat pencil notation on the envelope. What's this for? I asked. To cover your missed shifts while you consider his offer. The money felt like it was burning a hole through my bag as I climbed the 4 flights to my apartment. Inside the cramped studio, with its water-stained ceiling and temperamental radiator, I sank onto my futon and tried to think clearly. The offer was almost too perfect. A solution to every problem that had plagued me since my mother died. Financial security, a beautiful place to live, meaningful work with a child I'd already grown fond of. But working for Adriano Castellano meant being part of his world. A world I'd glimpsed only in newspaper headlines about disappearances and suspicious fires. A world where men carried guns to dinner and scanned restaurants for threats. I called my sister in Phoenix, careful to frame the situation as a normal job offer from a wealthy businessman looking for help with his deaf son. Maria was ecstatic, already making plans for what she could do if my promised support increased. Take it, Elena, she urged. You've sacrificed enough. When has an opportunity like this ever come along for people like us? People like us. The words echoed in my head long after we'd hung up. People who cleaned other people's houses and served their food and never quite managed to get ahead, no matter how hard we worked. I barely slept that night, tossing on the lumpy futon as rain pattered against my single window. By dawn, I had made my decision. The number on the card rang twice before a woman's voice answered. I accept the position, I said without preamble. A car will collect you and your belongings at noon, the woman replied, then hung up. Everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. I gave notice at both jobs, ignoring their protests and questions. By 12, I was waiting on the sidewalk, still half convinced I was making a terrible mistake. The same black sedan pulled up precisely on time. This time, Mrs. Abelli sat in the back seat. Mr. Castellano thought you might appreciate a familiar face, she explained as the driver loaded my meager luggage into the trunk. And I'll help you settle into your rooms. Rooms? Plural? She nodded. The East Wing Suite. It has a bedroom, sitting area, and private bath. It's near Lucas's quarters but maintains appropriate separation from the family spaces. I nodded, trying to appear as though having quarters and suites was a normal part of my vocabulary. As we drove, Mrs. Abelli outlined what would be expected of me. Lucas rises at 7 on school days, breakfast at 7:30, school from 9 until 2, then activities, swimming on Mondays and Wednesdays, piano on Tuesdays, art on Thursdays. Fridays are for outings, museums, parks, whatever educational experience Mr. Castellano approves. Weekends are more flexible, though Lucas has standing engagements on Saturday mornings with his grandfather. I tried to absorb it all, this structured life so different from my own chaotic existence of overlapping shifts and snatched meals. What about Mr. Castellano's business? I asked cautiously. Mrs. Abelli's expression remained perfectly neutral. Mr. Castellano conducts his business away from home. Your concern is Lucas, not his father's affairs. Message received. The mansion looked different in full daylight. Even more imposing, with its stone facade and wrought iron gates. As we pulled up the long driveway, I noticed security cameras discreetly positioned along the property's perimeter. 2 different guards from yesterday stood at attention near the entrance. "Security is extensive," Mrs. Abelli noted, following my gaze. "The staff has been with the family for years and is thoroughly vetted. You are never to open the gates or doors to anyone without clearance, regardless of who they claim to be." Inside, she led me past the grand staircase to an elevator hidden behind a panel in the wall. We ascended to the 2nd floor, then walked down a corridor to a heavy wooden door. "Your suite," she said, producing a key. The space beyond took my breath away. Sunlight streamed through tall windows overlooking the gardens. A sitting room with bookshelves and a comfortable sofa opened into a bedroom with the largest bed I'd ever seen, draped in creamy linens. The bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome, a deep tub positioned beneath a window. "This is all for me?" I managed to ask. "Mr. Castellano believes in appropriate accommodations for household staff." She opened a closet door, revealing empty shelves and hanging space. "Your uniforms will arrive tomorrow. Until then, please wear what you have that's most presentable." "Uniforms?" "Nothing elaborate. Slacks and blouses for daily wear. A few dresses for formal occasions. Mr. Castellano hosts business dinners monthly." I set my backpack on a velvet ottoman, feeling wildly out of place. "When do I start my duties?" "Lucas knows you're arriving today. He's been quite excited." For the first time, a hint of warmth entered Mrs. Abelli's voice. "He's in the library now with his tutor, finishing mathematics. You'll join them for his afternoon snack at 3, giving you time to settle in." After she left, I unpacked my pitiful belongings, which barely filled one drawer in the massive dresser. The clothes I'd thought perfectly acceptable at my apartment now looked shabby and worn against the luxury surrounding me. At precisely 3 o'clock, Mrs. Abelli returned to escort me to the library. The cavernous room had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on 3 walls, with rolling ladders to reach the highest volumes. A massive stone fireplace dominated the 4th wall. Lucas sat at a table with a middle-aged woman who was signing equations to him. When he saw me, his entire face lit up. He jumped from his chair and ran to me, throwing his small arms around my waist in a fierce hug. I felt my heart melt as I returned his embrace. Over his head, I saw his tutor watching with undisguised curiosity. Lucas pulled back, his hands flying in excited signs. "You came to stay. Dad said you would live here now." I nodded, carefully signing back. "Yes, I'm here to help you." "This is Miss Chen," he signed, pointing to his tutor. "She's boring but smart." I bit back a laugh and extended my hand to the woman. "Elena Reyes. I hope I'm not interrupting. Grace Chen." Her handshake was firm. "We were just finishing. Lucas has been distracted all day waiting for you." She gathered her materials and nodded to Lucas. "Remember to complete the worksheet for tomorrow." After she left, Mrs. Abelli directed us to a corner of the library where a small table had been set with milk, fruit, and cookies. Lucas immediately began showing me around the library, pointing out his favorite books, signing too rapidly for me to follow completely. I was so focused on him that I didn't notice Mr. Castellano's arrival until Lucas's expression changed, his hands pausing mid-sentence. "I see you've settled in," Mr. Castellano said, his deep voice startling me. Lucas ran to his father, signing rapidly. Mr. Castellano's stern face softened as he responded to his son, one large hand gently resting on the boy's shoulder. "Lucas is telling me he's already planning your activities for the week," he translated, his dark eyes meeting mine. "I hope you're prepared for his enthusiasm." "I'll do my best to keep up," I replied, watching their interaction with fascination. The fearsome man I'd served at the restaurant transformed completely when with his son, his signs fluid and expressive, his face animated in a way I'd never seen before. Lucas tugged at his father's sleeve, signing something that made Mr. Castellano's lip quirk in what might have been a smile. "My son would like to show you the gardens before dinner, if you're not too tired from moving in." I nodded, and Lucas grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the door with unrestrained excitement. As we left, I felt Mr. Castellano's gaze following us, calculating, assessing, perhaps still wondering if he'd made the right decision in bringing me into their lives. Block 4. The days settled into a rhythm I never imagined for myself. Mornings began with helping Lucas prepare for school. selecting clothing appropriate for the weather, making sure his homework was packed, and joining him for breakfast in the sunny kitchen, where Mrs. Abelli prepared pancakes shaped like animals or waffles with fresh berries. Mr. Castellano joined us most mornings, impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than a year of my former rent. He would sign with Lucas about the day ahead, scroll through emails on his phone, occasionally ask me questions about Lucas's progress. He was unfailingly polite, but maintained a careful distance, as though drawing a boundary between employer and employee. 3 weeks into my new position, I accompanied Lucas to his school for the first time, an elegant brick building with expansive grounds in an exclusive neighborhood. A security guard traveled with us in a separate car, maintaining a discreet distance while remaining vigilant. Lucas Castellano's father has specific security protocols, the school principal explained during our private meeting before classes. All visitors to the campus are screened, and Lucas is never to leave with anyone not on the approved list. The weight of Mr. Castellano's world pressed against me again. I wondered what enemies might target a child to get to his father. Lucas thrived at school. His teachers praised his intelligence and creativity, though several mentioned his occasional withdrawal from social situations. He has difficulty forming friendships, his language teacher explained during a conference. The other children sometimes find him intense, and of course the security presence creates a certain distance. I watched him during lunch break, sitting slightly apart from the other children, his security guard a shadow at the edge of the playground. One little girl approached him, signing something that made Lucas smile briefly before he returned to his book. "Does he have any friends who visit the house?" I asked Mr. Castellano that evening, as we reviewed Lucas's school progress in his study. He looked up sharply. "Why do you ask?" His teachers mentioned he's somewhat isolated socially. It's normal for children his age to have play dates, to build those social skills. Mr. Castellano's expression remained impassive, but I saw tension in the set of his shoulders. Security considerations make casual socializing complicated. "He's a child," I said softly. "He needs more than tutors and security guards in his life." Something flashed in his eyes, anger, perhaps, or defensiveness. Then it was gone, replaced by that calculating look I'd come to recognize when he was weighing options. "There are 2 children of my associates who might be suitable. I'll make arrangements." I nodded, expecting the conversation to end there. Instead, he surprised me. "What else have you observed about my son that I should know?" The question caught me off guard. "He's incredibly kind," I said after a moment. "He leaves food for the birds every morning. He notices when Mrs. Abelli seems tired and makes her origami flowers to cheer her up. He's teaching me sign language with more patience than most adults would have." Mr. Castellano's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Francesca was like that, noticing small details about people, remembering their preferences. He paused. "What else?" "He's lonely," I said honestly. "He watches you constantly, trying to gauge your reactions. He treasures any moment of your attention." His jaw tightened. "I provide everything he could possibly need. Except time," I said, then immediately regretted my boldness. Who was I to critique how Adriano Castellano raised his son? But instead of anger, I saw something like guilt flash across his face. "My business requires—" "I understand," I interrupted quickly. "I'm sorry. It wasn't my place to—" "No," he cut me off. "You're here to advocate for Lucas. Don't apologize for doing your job." He was silent for a moment, then added, "I'll clear my schedule on Sunday. Perhaps the 3 of us could visit the botanical gardens. Lucas has been studying plant ecosystems." "He'd love that," I said, surprised and pleased. The Sunday outing marked a turning point. Lucas was ecstatic to have his father's undivided attention, proudly showing off his knowledge of different plant species, his hands flying in excited signs. Mr. Castellano listened attentively, asking questions, his normally guarded expression relaxing into something approaching contentment. Security remained omnipresent. 3 guards positioned discreetly around us. But for a few hours, it felt almost like a normal family outing. As we walked back to the car, Lucas skipping ahead with one of the guards, Mr. Castellano said quietly, "Thank you for suggesting this. It meant a lot to him," I replied. And to you too, I think. His dark eyes met mine briefly. Yes, after that day, Mr. Castellano began making more regular appearances in Lucas's daily routine. He would stop by swimming lessons to watch his son's progress. He started joining us for bedtime stories once or twice a week, adding his own elaborate sign embellishments that made Lucas giggle. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted in his interactions with me too. The careful professional distance began to dissolve, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. It showed in small ways, lingering at the breakfast table to ask about my own childhood, bringing back a book from a business trip that he thought I might enjoy, inviting me to join their dinner when he didn't have business associates visiting. 2 months after I moved in, Lucas had his first play date with the son of one of Mr. Castellano's associates. Marco was a year older than Lucas, with a cheerful disposition that immediately put Lucas at ease. Both boys were fluent in sign language, their hands flying in animated conversation as they built elaborate structures with Lucas's building blocks. I supervised from nearby, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving them space to develop their friendship. Mr. Castellano came to check on them once, standing in the doorway with an unreadable expression. Later, after Marco had left and Lucas was having his bath, Mr. Castellano found me in the library. That went well, he said, pouring himself a small measure of scotch from the crystal decanter. Lucas seemed happy. He was, I agreed. Marco is coming back next week to continue their architectural masterpiece. He nodded, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Elena, there's a charity gala this weekend. I'm required to attend. I'd like you to accompany Lucas and me. My heart skipped a beat. Is that appropriate? I'm his caregiver, not what? His dark eyes fixed on mine. Not family, I wanted to say. Not someone who belongs in your world of wealth and power. Lucas will be more comfortable with you there, he continued when I didn't respond. Several children of my business associates will be attending. It's an opportunity for him to socialize in a controlled environment. Of course. This was about Lucas, not me. I don't have anything suitable to wear to a charity gala. That's easily remedied. I'll have my personal shopper bring selections tomorrow. The personal shopper arrived with racks of designer dresses, shoes, and accessories that probably cost more than I'd earned in my entire life. Under her expert guidance, I selected a midnight blue gown with a modest neckline and flowing skirt, simple enough not to draw undue attention, but elegant enough for the occasion. The night of the gala, Mrs. Abelli helped me with my hair, twisting it into an elegant updo that made me look like a stranger in the mirror. Lucas beamed when he saw me, signing that I looked like a princess. Mr. Castellano's reaction was more difficult to read. When I descended the stairs, he went completely still, his dark eyes tracking my movement with an intensity that made my skin flush. Acceptable? I asked nervously when I reached the bottom step. More than acceptable, he replied, his voice lower than usual. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, the ballroom transformed with glittering lights and elaborate flower arrangements. Security was discreet but extensive, with Mr. Castellano's personal guards supplementing the event's own security detail. Lucas stayed close to me initially, overwhelmed by the crowds and noise. I signed encouragingly, pointing out the other children gathered near a table of child-friendly desserts. Eventually, he ventured toward them, especially when he spotted Marco waving to him. "You're good with him," said a woman's voice beside me. I turned to find an elegant blonde watching Lucas. Most caregivers would be hovering, not giving him space to navigate on his own. "He needs to build confidence," I replied cautiously. She extended a manicured hand. "Sofia Ricci. My husband works with Adriano." I introduced myself, increasingly aware of the curious glances being cast our way. I'd noticed the whispers when we'd arrived, the speculative looks from the women, the assessing ones from the men. "So you're the mysterious Elena," Sophia continued, sipping champagne. "You've become quite the topic of interest in certain circles." My stomach tightened. "I'm just Lucas's aide," her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "Adriano Castellano doesn't bring just aides to events like this." She leaned closer. "Be careful, dear. Adriano's world is more complicated than it appears, even from the inside." Before I could respond, Mr. Castellano appeared at my side, his hand coming to rest at the small of my back. "Elena, there are some people I'd like you to meet." Sophia stepped back with a knowing smile. We were just getting acquainted. Lovely girl, Adriano. Throughout the evening, Mr. Castellano kept me close, introducing me to business associates and their wives, his hand occasionally returning to the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd. Each touch sent warmth spreading through me, a reaction I tried desperately to ignore. These people were polite, but calculating, their questions probing for information about my background, my relationship with the Castellanos. I kept my answers simple, focusing on Lucas whenever possible. "You're handling this well, Mr. Castellano murmured, as we watched Lucas playing a game with the other children, security guards positioned strategically nearby. These events can be challenging. Everyone's been very welcoming," I lied politely. His mouth curved slightly. "They're curious. I rarely bring anyone into my personal life." The way he said it made something flutter in my chest. Before I could analyze the feeling, Lucas ran over, signing excitedly about a magic show that was about to begin in a separate room for the children. As the evening wound down, Lucas fell asleep in the car on the way home, his head resting against my shoulder. When we arrived at the mansion, Mr. Castellano lifted him gently, carrying him to his room with a tenderness that still surprised me. I followed, helping to remove Lucas's shoes and tuck him into bed without waking him. As we stepped out into the hallway, closing the door softly behind us, I found myself standing close to Mr. Castellano. Too close. "Thank you for tonight," he said, his voice low. Lucas enjoyed himself more than I expected. "He did well," I agreed, suddenly very aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way the hall light caught the silver at his temples. His dark eyes studied me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. "Adriano," I whispered, uncertain whether it was a question or a warning. "Elena," he returned, my name a caress on his lips. For one charged moment, I thought he might kiss me. Then a door opened somewhere down the hall, and he stepped back, his expression closing off. "Good night, Elena," he said formally, turning to leave. "Good night, Mr. Castellano," I replied, the return to formality a clear signal of the line we'd almost crossed. In my room, I carefully removed the beautiful dress, hanging it in my closet beside the other fine clothes that had been provided for me. My reflection in the mirror looked flushed, eyes too bright. This wasn't part of the job description. These feelings that were growing like wildflowers in the carefully maintained garden of my professional role. I was here for Lucas, not to fall for his father. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't forget the way Adriano had looked at me, or the electricity of his fingers against my skin. I was playing a dangerous game in a world I didn't fully understand, and I had no idea what the rules were. The morning after the gala, everything changed. I awoke to unusual commotion. Raised voices, hurried footsteps in the normally quiet hallways. When I stepped out of my room, still in my pajamas, Mrs. Abelli was rushing past with a worried expression. "What's happening?" I asked. "There was an incident last night," she said tersely. "Mr. Castellano is fine, but security protocols have been elevated. Please stay with Lucas in the East Wing until further notice." My stomach clenched. An incident? Was someone hurt? But she was already hurrying away, leaving me with more questions than answers. Lucas was still asleep when I checked on him, his face peaceful, unaware of whatever storm was brewing in the household. I dressed quickly and returned to his room, determined to maintain normalcy for his sake. When he woke, I signed good morning and helped him select clothes for the day, making no mention of the increased security presence outside his door. "School today?" he signed, reaching for his backpack. I hesitated, unsure of the plan. Before I could respond, the door opened and Adriano strode in, his expression grim, a dark bruise shadowing his jaw. My breath caught at the sight. Lucas ran to him, his small hands reaching up to touch his father's face, eyes wide with concern. "I'm fine, Campione," Adriano signed, kneeling to Lucas's level. "Just a small accident, but we're going to stay home today, all of us." Lucas's hands flew rapidly. "Like a snow day, but with no snow?" Adriano smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Exactly. And Elena will stay with us too. Lucas looked delighted at this prospect, immediately signing plans for games and activities. Adriano stood, meeting my questioning gaze over Lucas's head. My office, after breakfast, he said quietly. Then, louder. Pancakes this morning, Lucas? Mrs. Abelli made your favorite with chocolate chips. Breakfast was strained, despite Lucas's excitement about the unexpected day off. Adriano's phone buzzed constantly. Security personnel moved through the house with urgent purpose. I maintained a cheerful facade for Lucas's sake, but questions burned inside me. After breakfast, Adriano instructed one of the guards to take Lucas to the home theater to select a movie. We'll join you shortly, Campione, he signed, pressing a kiss to his son's head. As soon as Lucas was out of sight, Adriano's demeanor changed, tension radiating from every line of his body. My office, he said curtly. I followed him through the house, noticing for the first time how many armed men were positioned throughout the property. Inside his study, 2 men in suits were waiting, not the usual security staff, but harder-looking individuals with unmistakable bulges beneath their jackets. Wait outside, Adriano instructed them. They left without question, closing the door behind them. Alone with him, I couldn't hold back. What's happening? Are you really okay? That bruise. There was an attempt last night, he interrupted, his voice controlled but tight with suppressed anger. After we left the gala, another vehicle tried to force us off the road. When that failed, they opened fire. Horror washed through me. Oh my God. Lucas was asleep and unaware, thankfully. The car's bulletproof, and my security team handled the situation. The cold detachment in his voice sent a chill down my spine. I suddenly remembered who he was, what he was, beyond the devoted father I'd come to know. Who would do this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A man in his position had enemies. That's being determined. His jaw tightened. But this isn't the first attempt, just the most brazen. I sank into a chair, the reality of the situation hitting me fully. This wasn't just about uncomfortable social events or navigating wealth disparities. This was life and death. Lucas can't go to school until this is resolved, Adriano continued. We're increasing security throughout the property. No one enters or leaves without clearance. How long will this last? His dark eyes met mine. As long as necessary. You should know that staying here may put you at risk as well. If you wish to leave... No, I interrupted firmly. I won't leave Lucas. Not now. Something shifted in Adriano's expression. Relief, perhaps. Or gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. The next 2 weeks passed in tense isolation. Lucas's tutors conducted lessons remotely. Guards patrolled the grounds continuously. Adriano disappeared for hours into his study with men whose hard eyes and careful movements spoke of violence barely contained. I focused on keeping Lucas's routine as normal as possible, creating indoor activities to burn his energy, maintaining his studies, watching his favorite movies. At night, I would find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of life I'd stumbled into, and whether I could ever leave it now. One afternoon, while Lucas napped after an exhausting science experiment involving vinegar volcanoes, I wandered to the kitchen for tea. I found Adriano there, staring out the window, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand despite the early hour. He turned when I entered. He's asleep? I nodded. The volcanic eruption was apparently very draining. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He mentioned building a super volcano next. Should I be concerned for the structural integrity of the house? I'll keep the destruction to acceptable levels, I promised, filling the kettle. Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable but charged with unspoken words. Finally, Adriano spoke. This isn't the life I wanted for him, he said quietly. Always looking over his shoulder, surrounded by security, unable to have normal friendships. I leaned against the counter, studying his profile. You've created as much normalcy as possible under the circumstances. Have I? He turned to face me fully. Or have I merely convinced myself of that to ease my conscience? Lucas is happy, I said. He feels safe and loved. Many children have far less. Because of who I am, what I do, he will always be a target. His voice was flat, a statement of fact rather than self-pity. As will anyone close to us. The implication hung in the air between us. Anyone close to us, including me. I knew what I was accepting when I took this position, I said carefully. Did you? I don't think either of us foresaw. He trailed off, but his eyes held mine with an intensity that made my heart race. The kettle whistled, breaking the moment. I turned to pour the water, grateful for the distraction. The situation will be resolved soon, Adriano said, his tone shifting back to businesslike efficiency. Lucas can return to school next week. Normal routines will resume. Normal, I echoed softly. But I was beginning to understand that in Adriano Castellano's world, normal was a luxury rarely afforded. True to his word, within days the security presence began to diminish. Lucas was permitted to play in the gardens again. Adriano's business associates resumed their visits to the house, though the meetings took place behind closed doors, voices carefully modulated. I never asked what had happened to the people who had attacked the car. Some questions were better left unasked in this world. As promised, Lucas returned to school the following Monday, though with doubled security. Life settled back into its rhythm, but something had fundamentally changed. The illusion of separation between Adriano's business and our domestic life had been shattered, and something else had changed too. The careful distance Adriano had maintained from me was dissolving. I would catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Our conversations lingered longer than necessary. His hand would brush mine when passing a book or cup, the contact brief but deliberate. One evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, I found Adriano in the library, staring into the fireplace, a book forgotten in his lap. "Is everything all right?" I asked, pausing in the doorway. He looked up, something vulnerable in his expression before he masked it. "Just thinking. Come sit if you'd like." I hesitated, then joined him on the sofa, maintaining a proper distance between us. "Lucas told me something interesting today," he said after a moment. "He asked if you were going to be his new mother." My breath caught. "What did you tell him?" "That relationships are complicated, and that while you care for him very much, we haven't discussed anything like that." Heat crept up my neck. That was a diplomatic answer. It was an honest one. His dark eyes studied me. "We haven't discussed it." My heart thundered in my chest. "Discussed? What's happening between us, Elena?" He set his book aside and turned to face me fully. "Don't tell me you haven't felt it too." I swallowed hard. "It would be inappropriate. I work for you. I care for your son. Is that all that's stopping you? Professional boundaries?" "No," I admitted quietly. "Your world frightens me, Adriano. 2 weeks ago, someone tried to kill you. Your son needs constant protection. Every person who enters this house is vetted and searched, and yet you've stayed. For Lucas," I said, but the words felt hollow even to my own ears. "Only for Lucas?" He moved closer, the space between us shrinking. "Elena, I've watched you change my son's life these past months. You've brought light back into this house that's been missing since Francesca died. You've changed my life too." My pulse raced. "This is dangerous territory. I live in dangerous territory," he replied, his voice low. "But never have I wanted something as much as I want this. Want you, despite the risks." Before I could respond, his hand came up to cup my cheek. His touch gentle despite the power I knew those hands held. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "And I will." I should have. Every rational thought screamed for caution. But when his lips met mine, I didn't pull away. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Then, as I responded, it deepened. Years of his carefully controlled emotions breaking through the surface. My hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength beneath his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality came crashing back. I pulled away, standing abruptly. "We can't do this," I said, wrapping my arms around myself. "Lucas already sees me as a mother figure. If this goes wrong, and if it goes right," Adriano challenged, rising to stand before me. "Elena, I haven't felt this way since Francesca. I never thought I would again." "You're my employer," I reminded him. "Then I'll release you from your contract. You can stay as my guest, not my employee." I shook my head. It's not that simple. Your world, your business, has nothing to do with us, with what we could build together. It has everything to do with us, I countered. 2 weeks ago, someone shot at your car. Your son needs security guards to attend school. You have men with guns in your house. How can you say it has nothing to do with us? His expression hardened. That's my life, Elena. The choices I've made. The business I've built. I can't change who I am. I'm not asking you to, I said softly. But I need to think about what this means. For me, for Lucas, for all of us. Without waiting for his response, I turned and left the library, retreating to my room where I paced for hours, replaying the kiss, the conversation, the implications of crossing this line with Adriano Castellano. I was still awake when my phone buzzed with a text message at 2 a.m. Whatever you decide, know this: what I feel for you is real. A. Sleep eluded me that night and the night after. Adriano and I maintained a careful politeness around Lucas, neither of us willing to disrupt the boy's sense of security. But the tension between us was palpable, at least to the adults in the household. Mrs. Abelli's knowing glances made it clear she suspected something had changed. A week after our kiss, everything shattered again. I was helping Lucas with an art project when Mrs. Abelli burst into the room, her usual composure gone. "Take Lucas to the safe room," she ordered, her voice tight with fear. "Now!" My blood ran cold. "What's happening?" "Security breach at the gate, armed men." She was already gathering Lucas's emergency bag from the closet. "You remember the protocol?" I nodded, my throat dry. We had rehearsed this, though I'd never thought we'd need it. Lucas looked between us, his eyes wide with fear as he registered our panic. I forced a calm smile, signing quickly. "We're going to play the hiding game we practiced. Remember?" His small hands trembled as he signed back. "Bad men coming?" "Just a precaution," I signed, even as the distant sound of gunfire reached us. "Come quickly now."